as you know, I'm an environmentalist. I know you're not, and for those of you that don't know, Jason burns tires in his backyard on Earth Day.
Yes, to
celebrate.
offset any progress being made by anybody trying to conserve any energy on Earth Day, I burn tires and spray Aquanet in my backyard to offset that, just so you know.
Right. Well, and meanwhile, I go around turning off everyone's lights and separating their trash into recycle bins. But nonetheless, I'm an environmentalist as much as the next environmentalist. And, I love turtles as well. But to burn 3,000 gallons of jet fuel to fly one turtle across the Atlantic, to me, I know it's not, I know this isn't a music story, and we talked last week about how we wanted to talk about the metal, and we do, but this story is so silly that it's metal, but it's so not metal. This is not something that when you think of the lead singer of Iron Maiden, and you picture Eddie and all the album covers, the last thing you would think is that the lead singer of Iron Maiden is flying an endangered turtle across the Atlantic.
Somewhere right now, Al Gore is in a dark room crying himself to sleep in the fetal position. Well, like he's laying, how like on Lifetime movies where like the woman is in the shower for like 45 minutes and she's scrubbing herself and she can't get clean because she was like sexually assaulted or something? That's how Al Gore feels right now about this story. The fact that we save a turtle by flying him in a private jet from England, or from Spain to Florida, to me is laughably funny. And it's not metal, but it's so effing metal as well. Like, it's so... Only Bruce Dickinson can pull that off and say, F you, I don't really care if you like it or not. I'm going to save this turtle kiss my ass. I just think it's great.
And in a related story, yet unrelated, Geezer Butler, the bassist for Black Sabbath, he is trying to appeal to the New York legislature.
Can you do this without laughing? I'm gonna challenge you. Go.
You can see my face right now. If you could see it, I'm holding back the tears right now.
This is so stupid,
he's trying
dude.
To appeal to the New York legislature to outlaw the declawing of cats.
Hello, I'm Geezer Butler, bass player of Black Sabbath. And let me just say, we got to do something about these bloody cats getting declawed.
Oh, I can't help it. And I love Blabbermouth. I do. It's a great website. I go there every day. I pull a lot of the news that you'll hear on this show from Blabbermouth, and they cover both of these stories ad nauseum, especially the turtle story. And when they do something right, I'm going to say they do something right. And when they really screw up, just like anything else, I'm going to call them out on it. And just so you know, of course, we had Lance King on the last episode. And if you didn't hear it, you need to go back and listen to that. It was an awesome interview. And again, thanks to Lance for being on. But, one of the things that Lance dropped on us that Jason and I had no idea this was being dropped on us was that 6 CD box set that Anubis Gate is coming out with, which includes 2 CDs of previously unreleased material, demos, things like that. So we actually, on the 12th, when the show aired, we sent a news story to you on Blabbermouth. You can submit news. We submitted that to them with a description of what the interview was about, along with the link, and said point blank, this is news and this is what's happening. A 6 CD set's being dropped, in an interview with Lance King, and this news was not out there. This was fresh news. So I waited. And I waited. A few hours went by. It still didn't show up. A day went by. It still didn't show up. 2 days went by. It still didn't show up. And then finally, Lance himself dropped the story publicly on the Nightmare Records website, which is fine. But not only did they not break the story then with us, but, Jason, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but Blabbermouth still has not carried that story.
But this just in, Bruce Dickinson flew a turtle across the Atlantic.
And Geezer Butler.
Look, first of all, hold on. I'm just going to have a separate rant on cats as it is, and this may piss you off, Biff, because I know you're a cat person. I think that cat people and 95% of cats need to be hung from a telephone wire until they die. But
I know your favorite show of all time is Alf.
Yes, I love Alf for that reason. But here's the thing: when it comes to there's a certain cats that are okay. Snowball, your cat was actually pretty badass. Give him a milk ring, he's good. But
International Cat of Mystery.
He was Austin Snowball Powers, baby. But what's funny about this whole thing is, again, Geezer Butler wanting cats to claw to New York is become a big story on Blabbermouth, and I'm sorry. I'm not going to pat ourselves in the back. It's not like we have a long track record of what it is, but we're going to talk metal. And yes, are we talking about these stories? Yes, but we're talking about them in a mocking way. We're not actually putting that out there as this is actual serious news. And the thing is if I'm playing devil's advocate for Blabbermouth, they're going to say, hey, look, a 6-disc Anubis Gate disc or box set that comes out, that's all well and good. That's great. But look, we put in a headline that Bruce Dickinson, blah, 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 or Geezer Butler, blah, blah, blah. It's going to result in site or traffic to the website and clicks and so on and so forth. And that's more justifiable news that we're going to jump all over versus actually telling people that, this progressive metal band from Europe somewhere is coming out with a 6-disc box set that people may or may not give a shit about. That's going to be if I'm playing devil's advocate, that's going to be the reason why they didn't pick up the story. Now, I know you have different thoughts about that.
Oh, I absolutely do. And I think the other thing they could have said was, you guys are new, we don't know you, and that's fine. But this wasn't us reporting the story. This was audio of Lance King himself who was dropping that story, and all we were doing was providing the link. It wasn't, selfish promotion of our show. And don't get me wrong, the extra publicity doesn't hurt, but we were actually reporting, hey, this is a newsworthy story, and it totally is. Granted, apparently not as newsworthy as cat claws or the turtle, but it's not like newspaper days. Now, in newspaper days, you had to fight for print space. There was only so much of it. That was it. In the days of the internet, there's no reason on the Blabbermouth website that they couldn't do both. If you want to report the cat claw story, great. But there's still room on your page for this too. And I really didn't understand. I didn't even get an email back like, hey, go screw yourself. We don't know who you are. Or, hey, can you edit it this way and then we'll submit it or whatever. I got nothing. So, like I said, love the website. Lots of great information, lots of great stories. I go there every day. But I think they really dropped the ball and continue to drop the ball on this story because that 6 CD box set is going to be amazing. And people need to know about it.
And a side note, and I agree, Biv, I think that, it's just, they're going to just base it on website traffic. That's all they really care about. So they're going to say, and it's going to maybe come off as if we're, butthurt over the fact that they didn't pick up a story. I don't really give a shit. The bottom line is this. If you're going to, troll the Facebook, troll Twitter, and try to get your story out there about Geezer Butler fighting the charge in New York to get cats declawed, have fun with that. Good luck. But, for those of us who actually give a shit about the news and things that are going on in metal that actually pertain to metal, this just in, maybe you should concentrate on that. Just saying. On the last episode of According to Metal, we talked with Lance King, who was really excited, so are we, about Myrath's new album, Legacy, which just came out on February 12th. In fact, we played a single on the last episode, Believer, which is their first single off the album. But how does the rest of the album shake down? Plus, Last in Line and Holy Grail. Yeah, it's review time. Let's go.
It's time for new metal album reviews.
That was a snippet, of course, off of Myrath's new album, Legacy. That was Get Your Freedom Back. Another really, really killer song off the album. They got a handful on this album, Legacy, their newest album that they just released on February 12th. And again, this is a band that they consider themselves Oriental metal, which I really don't get. And Lance said on last episode, he considers it Middle Eastern groove metal, and I'm actually way more in favor of his description than how the band actually describes themselves. But Myrath's new album, Legacy, is something that if you haven't heard their stuff before, and if you didn't hear last episode and heard The Single Believer, make sure you go back and do that. But it has a very Middle Eastern vibe to it. It has a real nice groove, great guitar, great drums, and it really, really floats. It's definitely metal, don't get me wrong, but it has a very Middle Eastern vibe as far as the ambiance and the music behind it. And this album, the strings and the accompaniment behind the traditional instruments are actually pushed out more in front. The guitars kind of take a back seat a little bit, which is a big risk in a metal album. When people want to hear metal, they want to hear big, crunchy, loud, in-your-face guitars. Myrath is a progressive band, progressive metal band, but again, or what you would consider a Middle Eastern groove metal is really what it comes down to. And these guys are from Tunisia, so it's not as if they're coming from a country that's a hotbed of metal right now. And it's a band that a lot of people haven't heard of, and we were glad to talk about them on last week's episode. We didn't get a chance to review it, so we're going to do that now. And Biv and I have got a chance to check out the album, a handful of times over the last couple of weeks or so. And, again, let's start with Believer, which is, first of all, the album starts off with Jasmine, which is an instrumental track, really good, leads into Believer. Believer is just incredibly accessible, the perfect single to choose as their first single off the album, which they already did. Great song, very catchy chorus, rocks. Get Your Freedom Back, which, again, is a snippet we just played. Awesome riff in the beginning, one of the cooler riffs I've heard from any band in the last 6 months as far as just how it goes into it. Great track as well. And there's some really, really killer songs on this album. Endure the Silence, Storm of Lies, The Needle, Unburnt. The Unburnt actually sounds dead up like a Petrucci riff to me. It's just a John Petrucci riff that comes off of it. Which, by the way, I have a bet that either Get Your Freedom Back or Endure the Silence are going to be the next single. That's just my two thoughts. Biv, what are your thoughts on the album so far? There's a couple things I'll say here in a little bit as far as some things that I'm not so keen on, but, let's talk about the positives of it. What were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, to kind of go back to the beginning, when you were trying to describe them, I think Lance's, Middle Eastern groove is dead on. If you're not familiar with this band, and maybe you're more familiar with the band Orphan Land, which is from Israel, very similar. If you like one, you probably will like the other. But I think Lance was also dead on the last episode when he said that he said 2 or 3 of these tracks would be really accessible, and the rest would be something that would have to grow on you. And typically that's true of progressive metal anyway. Is where there's a couple of tracks that you really just could be singles and they're going to be in your rotation, and the rest. Awake was that way with me. Believe it or not, the first couple times I heard Awake, there were a couple songs that stood out for me. But progressive metal is not something that usually all 12 tracks hit you and you just absolutely love them all. But I think if you give this multiple spins, it absolutely will be in your rotation.
I agree, and like I said, there's a couple misses here. Nobody Lives, Through Your Eyes are... And there's no easy way to say this, but with Middle Eastern groove metal, I still want it to be metal. And both of these songs, to me, were just really, really emphasized the kind of Middle Eastern vibe groove thing, which I just wasn't digging on those 2 tracks. I consider that to be kind of a compliment to the metal, and these 2 songs are the opposite. These are like, hey, here's pretty much a song